Show. All right, we're going to get Brian Sozzi's take right now as we are amidst this big minimum wage debate on a national level. There is one retailer that you watch closely, Brian Sozzi, that's raising its minimum wages and raising it even above the sort of $15 threshold that had been talked about in some of that latest legislation.
Yeah, this is probably Myles' new suburbia fave. Costco raising its minimum starting wage this week to $16 an hour. And the company last raised its starting wage in 2019 to $15 an hour. Quick note here, too, and this was brought to light by CEO Craig Jelinek, Costco CEO Craig Jelinek, last week in some testimony to the U.S. To a U.S. committee, noting that more than half of Costco's workers, hourly workers, are now paid $25 an hour. That is just crazy more than the federal minimum wage of $7.25, and a lot more than a lot of workers are getting in retail, specifically in those dollar stores, which in large part are still getting paid our hourly wages. So I have a bigger piece on Yahoo Finance now about this, looking at why Costco has historically paid well more than the minimum wage. And it goes back to co-founder Jim Sinegal, for years championed the just paying its hourly workers more under the thesis that happy workers give better customer service, leads to better sales, leads to better profits, and over time leads to a better stock price. And also, too, paying your workers more, chances are if Costco has paid those workers more, they're back in the Costco stores and spending more money inside of Costco, which again just creates a whole feedback loop. And in the story right now on Yahoo Finance, I go back, look about 11 years. Over the past 11 years, Costco has added more than $90 billion in sales, $90 billion in sales, and they've added over $3 billion in net profits. The stock price going back to August 29th, 2010, up 502% compared to about 155% gain for Walmart. So clearly, guys, this approach to paying workers more has worked well for Costco. Now, Walmart and Target, they have started to raise their wages. You know, Target last summer raised its starting minimum wage to $15 an hour. But again, both of them remain well behind Costco.
But I think as we get the minimum wage debate kind of fired up here over the next couple of years, because it does seem that we are going to see the minimum wage go higher in the U.S. How high is really the question. At this point, I think these stories are worth reminding folks that the businesses that pay minimum wage are by and large small businesses. And so that is sort of how you see that driving alliance between small business owners and the GOP, which both oppose minimum wage hikes. It's because they are the businesses that pay the minimum wage. Big businesses, Home Depot, Target, Costco, Walmart, et cetera, they are paying more than the minimum wage, partly because they can afford to, and also because if they pay more, it makes those small businesses that they are competing against and hoping to subsume less competitive from a wage perspective against them. But, you know, Sozzi, to your point about Costco's long-standing view on paying workers more, we've seen this with the stimulus checks that were sent out and the enhanced unemployment benefits. If you give people more money, they will then spend more money. And so there is also this belief that paying workers more would be a negative for growth, and yet paying workers more puts more money into the hands of consumers. And when the vast majority of growth is based on consumer consumption or just on consumption, then of course it sort of follows, right, that people getting paid more would eventually work its way back into the economy. But there's a lot of hardening that has happened here along political lines, along economic ideological lines that is going to be very difficult, perhaps impossible, to ever sort of, kind of cross that chasm. But, I think all of these things are likely to take a more prominent role in the economic conversation going forward, because it does seem that wages are the place that these conversations are going to play out. We asked, how would sending stimulus checks, reverberate through the system? I think the answer is, how much more are we going to pay people? How much more are we going to mandate that people be paid? Seems to be the conclusion, rather, the follow-on conversation from what we learned about the checks.
And Julie, I'll quickly mention here, I am concerned how the longer-term business models of a dollar stores, even of fast food restaurants, how they play out in a $15 an hour minimum wage, where this certainly appears to where it's going. I don't know about you, but I'm not paying $20 for a Big Mac. I'm just not. I'm not doing it.
Well, I'm not buying a Big Mac anyway, so I'm not in the, I can't speak to that. But I will say, just to piggyback on what Myles was saying, when so much of the conversation over the past year has centered around equity among workers, equity among Americans, you can't have that conversation without having the minimum wage conversation. It really is very closely tied what people get paid and how we sort of raise the stakes for everyone. You can't really do that without paying people more. So it seems like, to your point, this is a conversation that is definitely not going